All right, we're going to be looking at lesson 8.2, and in 8.2, we're just going to be looking at the factoring part of it, okay? So it says factoring a GCF. So GCF is just simply known as the greatest common factor. All right, so when we're looking at expressions like this, we want to know what the largest number and variable, now it could be more than one, so variable or variables, that can be divided from all parts of an expression. Okay, so we're going to look here at number 1. And so when I'm looking at this, I want to know, first off, what's the biggest number? Well, what's the biggest number 15 and 25 have in common? Okay, hopefully you're all coming up with 5. So the biggest number that they have in common is 5. Now, as far as the variables go, it's kind of like backwards. So here there's only one x, and here there are 2 x's. So now how many x's do they have in common? They have one x in common, so you can take a 5 and an x out of both parts, okay? So again, what can be divided into both sections, okay? And so we're going to pull out a 5x, or we're going to divide by 5x. So now when we do this, we kind of change colors here, you're going to divide both parts, technically, by 5x. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. The x's will cancel out, plus 25 divided by 5 is 5. And then here, if we're looking at x squared and x, we're going to subtract, right, because we're dividing variables. So we're going to subtract and find out that there's only one x left over. Okay, so when we're looking at the variables, again, I know it's kind of weird, but you're actually going to pull out, if you've got a 1 and a 2, you pull out the smallest one. Okay, all right, let's try another one here. So when I'm looking at this guy right here, 12, 24, and 30. So we're thinking about what number they all have in common, and hopefully you're coming up with a 6. So now you look at your x's. You have 1x, and 2 x's. All right, so again, if you need to write it out, write it out. I've got an x here, I've got an x here, and I've got 2 x's here. Now, how many do they all have in common? They all have 1 x in common. Same thing for the y's. I got 1y, 2y, 4y. So how many y's would they all have in common? They would only have 1 y. Okay, so now basically again, you're just dividing all parts by 6xy. So 12 divided by 6 is 2. The x and the y cancel. Divide the middle by 6xy. So 24, put the plus sign there. So 24 divided by 6 is 4. The x's cancel. I subtract my y's and get 1 left on top. And then I divide here and get 6xy. So 30 divided by 6 is minus 5. X squared and x leaves me 1x on top. Y to the 4th and y leaves me 3 y's on top. Okay, so now in reality, I need you to understand that kind of come back here. Factoring, so when I say factor, I'm actually just undistributing, right? So if I'm thinking about this guy right here, technically I would take the 5x to the 3 and the 5x to the 5. And if I did that, I would get 15x plus 25x squared, which would then take me back to there. So in reality, we're actually just undistributing something, all right? So we would technically, just like I said, distribute this back in to get to here. Well, we're just working backwards. So now we're just going to pull it out and put it on the outside. All right, so let's go down here. I want you to go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to try to do 3 and 4 on your own. Okay. So on number 3, biggest number that they have in common looks like to be an 8. So an 8, x and x, you can pull out an x, and z squared, you can pull out 1z. So now again, divide this. So 18 or 16 divided by 8 is 2. The x and z's cancel, minus, and then divide this part. 40 divided by 8 is 5. The x's cancel, and you have 1z left over on the inside. All right, so moving to the next one here. Biggest number that they have in common is a 2. Now, A3, A2, they only have one A in common. B squared, B, and then B to the 3rd, they only have one B in common. So, again, I'm dividing by 2AB. The 2's cancel. 3 minus 1 is 2, so A squared. 2 minus 1 is 1B left over. Okay, so divide by 2B here. 2AB. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. The A and the B cancel. All right, and then we're going to divide by 2AB on this last one, and we're going to get 8. A squared and A leaves you one A on top, and then you get two B's left on top. Okay, and again, notice that we are undistributing. So if I asked you to distribute this back, you would just push it back through and you should get this answer right here. So we're undistributing. That's what factoring is, undistributing. Okay, all right, so now let's go down here. So now on this guy, there's no variable in common here. All it has is a 4 in common. So you are going to divide both parts by 4, okay? And so when I do that, the 4's will cancel here, and I've got an x squared. And then 4 divided by 4 is 1. A lot of people forget to put this 1 there. So if you pull out of both parts, you still, if you've got two parts here, you need to have two parts down here in the inside of your parentheses, okay? So if you have a binomial here, you need a binomial here. So just keep in mind that we are dividing. 4 divided by 4 is 1. Okay, next problem, number 6. Okay, so if I'm looking at this guy, 13 and 5 have nothing in common. X squared, no. Y squared, no. So when nothing will be pulled out, okay, it's called prime. Okay, and prime just means not factorable. In other words, there's nothing you can do to the problem. So this right here would be your answer. So if you can do nothing to a problem, it's called prime. All right, and our last one here. Okay, so when I put this example in because I wanted you to look at, okay, what happens when we have negatives? If you've got negatives across the board, then I would go ahead and be pulling out a negative. So in this case, I'd pull out a -2. And then if I'm kind of looking at this guy, just keep in mind, x squared or 2 x's. I have 4 x's here, so then how many do they have in common? 1, 2. So I have -2x squared. All right, so now I'm technically dividing by -2x squared. So all of this is going to cancel. I got a 1. Now divide this by -2x squared. Well, negative by negative is a positive. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then x to the 4th and x squared, there would be 2 left on top. Okay, and that would be my answer. So again, on this one, if you've got negatives across the board, go ahead and let's pull a negative out. Okay, all right, that concludes 8-2 notes.